Hello. Many years ago, I gave a sermon series, quite a long one, about the beginning of Genesis. Now, at the time, it was framed in terms of the battle of the sexes and trying to understand the spiritual roots of the differences between men and women. Since then, rapid changes in society and in terms of moral fashions have framed the question in a different way. What is at the fundamental root of our human identity on this earth? How do we express it? What does it mean? And it's very interesting that in this debate, increasingly, the beginning of Genesis has been sidelined. In fact, if you look at morning prayer in the Church of England, Genesis 3 was actually an optional passage to be supplanted by something from the Apocrypha, if you wish to do so. This is because it's spiritual dynamite, speaking at the very heart of who we are as human beings, but not fashionable in terms of where our society is today. But I have to admit that I've always been a bit of a rebel. I'm not really into moral fashion. Everybody has their own life situation, and everybody's life situation is different from everybody else's. And what's good for one person clearly wouldn't therefore necessarily be good for another. And if you want something that's eternal, it can't shift from age to age, like the sands in the desert blown around by the wind, constantly being shaped and refashioned according to the direction that things are blowing at that time. That's not an eternal value. That's a made-up convenience. Nor can it lock into culture, just the most convenient way for people who set the trends to live. There has to be something deeper, something with more ultimate benefit, that's based not just on the preferences of a collection of people or a pressure group, not on the basis of getting re-elected, but on the basis of something of a deeper and more lasting value. When we base our values upon what the Bible says, we're basing them upon where God is. And remember, God is always the God of now. He's outside of time. So his root nature does not change. In every age, we've been tempted to try and make God in our own image, to make him the way that we want him to be. And what we do is we devalue God. We start to try and rule over him. And actually, it's in Genesis 3 that we're told that that is very, very wrong. But we need to start a little bit further back. So what I've done is I thought I'd start with Genesis 1:27. I'm just looking down at my Bible here. So God created man, that's humanity, in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Now this is not just a physical statement. It's a spiritual statement. Now you see, if you're in a materialistic society, which is what we've been in for a long time now, everything has to be measured. And philosophically, what happened in the 20th century, a process that had already begun way before then, was that anything that measured humanity in spiritual terms was disqualified. Measurements had to be ones that we could make scientifically. Now the problem with this is it denies the spiritual element to a human being. And yet the Bible says it is God that has set eternity in our hearts. We are fundamentally spiritual beings, told that the only way to measure ourselves, to understand ourselves, is in material terms. That basic contradiction sums up why we struggle to be the people that we were made to be. Because our nature and identity has actually been created by God and is rooted in Him. We are made in His image. How do we think about God? Is He a man? Well, of course He's not a man. Is He a woman? No, of course He's not. God is spirit, says Jesus. And those who worship Him in spirit and in truth. So when it says that humanity is made in God's image, we know that that is a spiritual image. In other words, it's the core of our personal nature and identity, not the way we look at on the outside. And God's saying at the core of that identity is actually a gender identity. It's not a measurable physical identity. It's not an identity that we've cooked up in our minds. It's an identity that God has given us. And what may well have happened from our earliest days is that that's been twisted, suppressed, tweaked, reprogrammed. But at its core is a way of expressing ourselves in our relationship with God. Not in our relationship with ourselves, not in our relationship with other people, but in our relationship with God. God made us in His image so that we could communicate with Him. It is not a message to tell us that God looks like us, because God is spirit. Nonetheless, God does tell us to think of Him as male. He does that because He believes it will be helpful for us in our relationship with us. He does not do it because He is male in the sense that I'm male. And one of the ways that is expressed in human experience, a key way that it's expressed, is in marriage. Because in marriage you get the male and the female coming together in what is, as far as God is concerned, first and foremost, a spiritual relationship expressing His nature. And I'll talk more about that next time.